5 months pregnant, I was advised by the doctor to rest in bed due to signs of a potential miscarriage. I resigned from my job to focus on taking care of the baby. To my surprise, my mother-in-law suggested I split the living expenses. My husband also made it clear that he works hard for his money and questioned why I should be spending it. I couldn't help but laugh at their absurdity. Fine, we'll split the living costs. But I've already carried this baby for 5 months, so you can take over for the remaining 5. Ding! This novel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. 5 months into my pregnancy, due to signs of a potential miscarriage, I resigned from my job to stay at home and take care of myself. After spending a fortnight at my parents' house, I returned home, only to discover that the locks had been changed and I couldn't get in. I knocked on the door, calling out to my mother-in-law, asking her to open it. To my surprise, she replied, "Daisy, you can come in, but before you do, we need to have a chat." I was taken aback, not understanding what she meant. My relationship with my mother-in-law had never been good. Unfortunately, Leo was from a single-parent family, and he often spoke about how his mother had been widowed for over a decade, raising him alone and putting him through university with great difficulty. He always insisted that we must take good care of her after our marriage. At the time, although I didn't want to live with my mother-in-law, she was frail and alone. We're all raised by our parents, and since I married Leo, it was my responsibility to care for his mother. Moreover, I'm an only child myself, and Leo would have to help care for my parents in the future as well. Things were fine at first, but when I became pregnant, my mother-in-law started finding fault with everything I did. Today, she had the audacity to lock me out of my own home. I immediately called Leo. To my surprise, his phone rang from inside the house. Clearly afraid I'd hear it, the ringing stopped after the second ring. I closed my eyes, trying not to upset the baby, and raised my voice while suppressing my anger. "Leo, what's the meaning of this? You're at home and you're letting your mom lock me out?" Leo remained silent. My mother-in-law, however, let out a shrill laugh. "Daisy, dear, don't try to intimidate Leo. You may be his wife, but I'm his mother. He's a filial son and won't go against me. So, I assume this little act isn't just to show me how close you two are," I retorted. My mother-in-law chuckled and said in a commanding tone, "Daisy, you're not working now, and you're pregnant. Leo has to bear all the household expenses alone. Don't you think you should contribute something? It doesn't have to be much. Just split all household expenses with Leo, but remember, your personal expenses aren't included in that. My son isn't responsible for those." I knew she was up to no good, but I was still shocked by her proposition. After a moment, I called out, "Leo, if you're still a man, say something. Do you agree with what your mom is saying?" If he thought the same way, I really needed to reconsider this marriage. After a long pause, Leo's voice finally came from inside. He sounded uncertain and stammered. "Daisy, I know this is unfair to you, and I think my mom is being too harsh. But we're both adults with capable hands and feet. Why should you quit your job just because you're pregnant and live off my money?" His words made me laugh bitterly. If the doctor hadn't said I was at risk of miscarriage, do you think I'd willingly quit my job to stay at home and look at your mother's sour face all day? I retorted. "You want to know why? I'll tell you why. It's because I'm carrying this child for 9 months, risking my life to give birth." Leo's mother scoffed coldly. "You don't even know what you're carrying yet, and you're already using the child as leverage. If it turns out to be a girl, we'll make your parents pay to raise it. You can stay at home and keep having babies until you give us a grandson." Leo, sounding panicked, tried to persuade me through the door. "My mom says if you don't agree, she'll make me divorce you." "Of course I won't divorce you. I love you and the baby," I replied. "Now that you're not working, all the financial burden falls on me," Leo continued. "We need money for when the baby is born. Please just listen to my mom. I promise, after your postpartum period, you can go back to work whenever you want. We won't split bills anymore. If you need money, you can ask your parents. You're their only child, so everything will be yours in the future anyway, right? After 8 years with Leo, I knew he was frugal and stingy, but I never imagined he could be so shameless. I clutched the bank card my mother had given me. These people truly didn't deserve us. The neighbors, having heard the commotion, had come out to watch the drama unfold. I no longer cared about keeping up appearances. None of that mattered anymore. I laughed coldly. Fine. If we're splitting living expenses, then I've already carried this baby for 5 months. I'll charge you for the remaining 5 months. Leo said, Daisy, don't be silly. That's not how you calculate pregnancy. Leo's mom wasn't pleased and berated her son for being useless. Why are you being so submissive? She's just a woman. When she married you, not only her but everything her family owns became yours. For years, we've been nice to her because she wouldn't have a child. Now that she's pregnant and the baby's well-formed, are you afraid she'll run off? Don't pamper her. With a child tying her down, I'd like to see what trouble she can stir up. I suddenly realized they had always intended to inherit everything. Although Leo often lacked initiative, he had been good to me in our years together. He just couldn't stand up to his mom. I placed my last hope in him and asked one final question, Leo, do you agree with what your mom is saying? Leo weakly began, darling, my mom's right. You're already 30 and pregnant. When a woman marries, she's supposed to honor her husband's family. Everything, including you and your family, belongs to us. I cut him off, enough. Why don't you take that cloth off your head and wash it? You've got some nerve talking big while living off me. Let's get a divorce. Leo's mom sneered, who else would want a pregnant woman like you besides my son? I'd like to see who you can find. Ignoring her taunts, I turned and went downstairs. I wiped away tears as I walked. Due to the day's emotional turmoil, my belly began to ache slightly. I had only left my parents' house a few hours ago, but I was back already. This made my mom and dad realize something was wrong. I briefly explained the situation and then started crying in my mom's arms. My parents had raised me all my life, and I thought that by getting married and having a child, I could finally give them less to worry about. I never imagined I'd be facing divorce so soon. My dad's hands were shaking with anger as he listened to my story. Daisy, listen to father, he said. It's a good thing you've discovered their true colors now. If they had kept up the charade until they'd completely drained our family's resources, that would have been when you'd truly suffer. My mom wiped away her tears and added, your dad's right. No matter what happens, you'll always have us. But if you're going to divorce, what about the baby? I shook my head. I really hadn't figured out what to do about the baby yet. The baby was nearly 6 months along now. Having an abortion would definitely be harmful to my body. And I'd already developed an emotional attachment to the child. My maternal instincts were kicking in, and I was considering keeping the baby, but getting divorced was the priority for now. However, before I could take any action, Leo and his mother showed up at our door early the next morning. Leo's mom pounded on the door, screaming insults at the top of her lungs. Daisy Bailey, open this door right now, she shouted. You better explain yourself. Why do you want to divorce my son? You're having an affair, aren't you? That's why you're in such a rush to get divorced. I'm going to make sure your entire neighborhood knows what you've done, you little tramp. With that, she started kicking our door. We live in an old council estate with no lift. My parents aren't materialistic, so we've never moved in all these years. Now Leo's mom's loud voice is probably heard by all the neighbors upstairs and downstairs. My parents are both university professors, cultured and refined. But today my dad's eyes are red with anger, and my mom's even grabbed a broom as she opened the door. Leo stood in front, showing none of his usual respect for my parents, and pushed my mom aside. I quickly steadied her. Leo, are you mental? Coming to my house early in the morning with your mom to make a scene. Leo looked at me accusingly. Daisy, how have I not been good to you? Why are you betraying me? I was baffled. How am I betraying you? Wanting a divorce is betrayal now? Leo's mom squeezed in. Daisy, stop making excuses. I saw you yesterday after you left, getting into a man's car. No wonder you insist on divorce, you've already found your next target. What sin did our Ainsworth family commit to have a daughter-in-law like you? Neighbors had already gathered outside to watch the drama, with whispers floating around. Leo's mum grew even more smug, raising her voice. Neighbors, please judge for yourselves. We paid $188,000 as a dowry to marry her. I even sold our old house back home. They're all intellectuals. Does that mean intellectuals can bully us country folk like this? My blood boiled, and I shook with anger. I couldn't hold back anymore and pointed at her nose, scolding. If your eyes don't work, you'd better donate them to someone who needs them. Then I pointed at Leo. Your mum's blind, and are those two things of yours just for show? Or is your whole family just a bunch of yokels who don't know what a ride-hailing service is? I called a taxi online, and suddenly I'm having an affair? Your family is truly ridiculous. I continued my tirade. You have the nerve to mention the dowry, but why don't you mention where it went? The day after the wedding, your relatives from back home were at our door demanding money back. It was you two, mother and son, crying and begging, saying the dowry money was borrowed and asking me to pay it back. I was so in love then that I actually did it. The house you're living in is mine, the car you're driving is mine, and you still have the cheek to ask me to split living expenses. You two are like mosquitoes that can never be satisfied, sucking one person dry. If I don't divorce now, what am I waiting for? A miracle? Leo ran his fingers through his hair in frustration. Daisy, I'm sorry I misjudged you. But my mom only wants what's best for me. She's just worried about the pressure I'm under. If you're not happy, we can talk about it more. Leo's mother yanked him away, scolding. Look at you, you spineless fool. If she wants a divorce, let her have it. You're a man, you can find a nice girl with a clean slate after divorcing. Who would want damaged goods like her? She wouldn't dare leave you. Mom, please stop. I don't want a divorce, Leo protested. He pulled away from his mother's grasp and looked at me with tears in his eyes. Daisy, we can't get divorced. You're pregnant with our child. Even if we split up, I'm still the baby's father. You can't sever all ties with me. Exactly. Leo's mother grew even more aggressive. That child is of the Ainsworth bloodline. Everything you have will still belong to us in the end. Stop putting on airs like you're some untouched maiden. You're nothing but damaged goods now. I suddenly understood why his mother's attitude had changed so drastically before and after the wedding. She had planned to sweet-talk me into marriage, knowing I couldn't leave once I was pregnant. Then she would slowly consume my family's assets. My parents were lifelong educators who had never encountered such a shrew. Even seething with anger, they didn't utter a single swear word. My father took out his phone and started dialing. I'm calling the police to report you for trespassing and slandering my daughter. Leo might not understand the law, but his mother certainly did. Fearing the situation would escalate and affect his job, he quickly dragged his mother towards the door. My mother angrily swatted at him with a broom as they left. Leo Ainsworth, I was blind to let my daughter marry you. This marriage must end, she shouted. Leo fired back. As long as she's carrying my child, I won't agree to a divorce. If it's a boy, I'll consider it, but you'll owe me $300,000 for emotional damages. If it's a girl, she has to come back and keep trying for a son. There's no chance of divorce then. My mother slammed the door shut and came to embrace me. I bit my lip, my hands unconsciously moving to rest on my swollen belly. This was my child. But sadly, I could no longer keep the baby. As Leo said, as long as we had a child together, we would always be connected. The next day, I went to the hospital accompanied by my parents. Lying on the operating table, my whole body trembled. I had imagined countless times what the baby would look like after birth. A tiny little thing, slowly growing up. I would hear their soft voice calling me Mummy. As I felt the cold instruments enter my body, I closed my eyes, tears of regret falling silently. After leaving the hospital, I've been resting at home. Not only does my body need to recover, but the psychological wounds inflicted by this marriage also require time to heal. For the first few days, Leo Ainsworth would still call me. I took the opportunity to bring up divorce, asking him to return the house and car. He and his mother disagreed, and their words became increasingly unpleasant. Since that was the case, I saw no point in further discussion with them. I directly blocked all their contact methods and reached out to a solicitor to file for divorce against Leo. I made a list of the money I had spent on Leo over these years. Not counting the car and house, just on food, clothing, and daily expenses, it amounted to nearly $200,000. Leo and I met at university. Back then, he was quite insecure due to his poverty. He was basically invisible to others. Later, when we do a master's degree in the same university again, we gradually became closer. I eventually learned that he came from a single-parent family. His father had passed away when he was 10, and his mother had been supporting him by doing odd jobs. After I started dating Leo, I often felt that his pocket money was insufficient, so I would supplement it with my own. At that time, Leo must have truly loved me. To buy me a birthday cake, he handed out flyers in the snow during winter when the weather was minus 20 degrees Celsius. His hands were swollen and red from the cold. He said that although I didn't lack cakes or money, he wanted to give his girlfriend a birthday cake earned by his own hands. Once, at midnight while having barbecue, I was harassed by some drunk men. He would fearlessly stand in front of me to protect me, even if he got beaten bloody. He would still shout, "Don't touch my girlfriend." Later, when we started working, he would always say that his colleagues at the company all wore designer brands. And every time he went to meet clients, his cheap clothes would make people look down on him. At the time, I didn't think too much of it. I felt that a man's face was important in the outside world. So I painfully took out my savings to buy him clothes and shoes. Sometimes, for the sake of work relationships, he would treat colleagues to meals. Every time it would be at high-end restaurants, and every time I would be the one paying. I was very capable at work, becoming a department manager in just a year. My salary was also twice that of Leo's. My parents thought it was too tiring for me to squeeze onto public transport for my commute, so they bought me a car. But Leo said he often went out to meet clients and always had to take taxis. The clients would question his work ability, thinking the company didn't value them. So I let him use the car first. When his mother fell ill and needed surgery, Leo's family could only come up with $20,000. Seeing him borrowing money everywhere and crouching in corners blaming himself, I couldn't bear it. So I went home to ask my parents for money. At that time, Leo even wrote me an IOU. He said he would never let me down in this lifetime, and we would get married as soon as his mother recovered. I originally thought his family wouldn't be able to afford a bride price, but to my surprise, they readily agreed to $188,000. The only condition was that his family couldn't afford to buy a house, so they wanted my parents to buy one. My parents were also understanding, and Leo's mother seemed gentle and honest at the time. So my parents agreed. They used the house they had previously bought for me outright as our marital home. Afterwards, his mother boasted everywhere that Leo had found a girlfriend from the city. Not only from a wealthy family but also with a decent job earning a lot. Thinking about it now, I really want to slap myself twice. In fact, I actually did so. Leo might have had genuine feelings for me. But he couldn't withstand his mother's constant instigation in his ear, coupled with his own inability to resist the temptation of money. The only thing he clung to about me was money. I handed over all these details to the solicitor. I thought Leo would agree to the divorce after receiving the court summons. But unexpectedly, his mother started causing trouble again. That day, I was queuing for an interview at my new company. Suddenly, I heard a shrill scream from behind. "Daisy Bailey, you little tramp. Get out here." I shuddered. I turned around abruptly to see Leo's mom. Before I could react, I saw her hurling the contents of a thermos flask at me. I quickly dodged, but some still splashed onto my clothes. The others next to me weren't so lucky. They got drenched, and their faces and hair all wet. I breathed a sigh of relief. Thank goodness it was just soup. If it had been acid, someone could have died. The others screamed, "Where did this nutter come from? Call the police and have her arrested." Leo's mom was quickly restrained by security, but she struggled fiercely. "Pa, you all deserve it. That's what you get for standing next to this little tramp. Because of the loud commotion, the interviewing managers came out. One of them tried to reason with Leo's mom. This is a place of business. If you have personal matters to discuss, please do so outside. You're disrupting our work. Leo's mom glared at him. Who do you think you are? I'm sorting out my family affairs. It's none of your business. Get lost. The manager, angered, quickly instructed security to remove her. Leo's mom instantly collapsed to the ground, crying and making a scene. You rich people, always bullying an old woman like me. Daisy, you're using your numbers to bully your mother-in-law. You ungrateful daughter-in-law. Hearing my name called out again, I knew I couldn't avoid it anymore. I stepped forward and apologized to the manager. As expected, my interview was cancelled. But Leo's mom was still relentless. Daisy, if you won't stay with my son, I won't let you have an easy life either. Come on, everyone, judge for yourselves. You're all educated people. This woman committed marriage fraud. My son spent all our family's savings to marry her, and now she wants a divorce. The manager asked me to take her away quickly. But she wouldn't listen to me either. Leo's mom was like a madwoman, rolling on the ground. No one dared to approach her. You managers, come and judge. This woman married my son for less than 3 years. When we married her off, we scraped together £18,800 for the bride price. After the wedding, I, an old woman, still had to take care of her. Just because she got pregnant, she started giving me attitude every day. My son just argued with her a bit, and now she wants a divorce. Tell me, where in the world are there people like this? Not only does she want a divorce, but she also wants us to give her the car and the house. She's not a daughter-in-law, she's a robber. Oh, why is my life so miserable? Some of the uninformed onlookers started discussing quietly. This woman looks so innocent, who would have thought she was like this? You can't judge a book by its cover. No wonder she's interviewing at our company. Her last workplace must have fired her after finding out what she's really like. People like her must have found another rich man to leech off. My anger was rising rapidly. This wretched old woman was quite skilled at twisting the truth. I had really underestimated her. I strode up to Leo's mother and stared at her expressionlessly. Are you so confident that I won't speak up? Are you counting on my parents caring too much about saving face to reveal that I was tricked into marriage and swindled out of money? Is that why you're acting so shamelessly? Leo's mother faltered, her gaze becoming evasive. I don't know what you're talking about. If you're trying to turn this around on me, I won't let you get away with it. The threat in her words was obvious. I narrowed my eyes. You claim you gave me a lavish dowry, but I didn't see a penny of it. It was all taken back the very next day. As for the house and car, those are my premarital assets that my parents bought for me. They're in my name. What did your son bring to the marriage? Just you, his deranged mother. I clenched my fists and took a deep breath. And regarding the divorce, wasn't it you lot who made me, a pregnant woman, shoulder all the household expenses while trying to bleed my family dry? Leo's mother's face contorted with rage. You little tramp, say one more word and I'll tear your mouth off. Undeterred by her threat, I turned to address the onlookers. From the time I started dating her son, he's been spending my money. Now they want to claim my family's assets as their own. With in-laws like these, if I don't divorce, I'll be left with nothing but the last drop of my blood. The crowd nodded in agreement. The female employee who had been splashed with soup angrily pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police right now. This vile woman threw soup today, next time it could be acid. The other 2 affected employees also agreed to involve the authorities. Now Leo's mother began to panic. She stopped her theatrics and stood up, raising her hand to strike me. Daisy Bailey, I'm still your mother-in-law. How dare you turn outsiders against me like this? I'll teach you some manners, you ill-bred little. But before her hand could land, I firmly gripped her wrist. I stared her down, enunciating each word clearly. If you dare lay a finger on me, I'll make sure you rot in prison. Try it if you don't believe me. Leo's mother deflated instantly. A security guard standing nearby mocked her. Look, lady, there's nothing wrong with wanting money. But you can't commit crimes to get it. If you're still in the same place after all these years, maybe you should reflect on whether your son just isn't working hard enough. If all else fails, find him a rich stepfather. Another guard chuckled. Now I understand where all those TV drama plotlines come from. It's all inspired by real life. You'll pay for this, Daisy. I won't let you off easy. Leo's mother snarled, realizing she would gain nothing by continuing this scene. She turned to leave after issuing this final threat. I called after her, "Don't be in such a rush to leave. The police are on their way. There are some matters we need to clear up at the station." As I left the police station, I ran into Leo Ainsworth, who was rushing over in a hurry. "Well done, Daisy. You've managed to get my mom sent to the police station," he said sarcastically. I looked at the clothes he was wearing and the watch on his wrist, all bought with my money. Your mom caused a scene and threw soup at an innocent person. I didn't call the police, the victim did. I forgot to tell you, your mom's been detained for 15 days. Leo gritted his teeth in anger. Daisy, you can't treat my mom like this just because I love you. Our families are in this together now. If my family loses face, your parents won't be spared either. I let out a cold laugh. You should have received the court summons by now. Hurry up and divorce me, and return the house and car to me. Don't forget you still owe me 10 grand from when your mom had surgery in hospital. Leo stared at my face for over 10 seconds, then suddenly broke into a smile. I'll agree to the divorce if you give birth to the baby and hand it over to me. Then pay me a lump sum of 30 grand for child support, plus another 30 grand for emotional distress. After that, I won't bother you again. I looked at the man before me, making such outrageous demands, and remembered the man who once ran all over town to buy me gifts. His appearance hadn't changed, but now he wasn't pretending anymore. His true face was exposed. I scoffed, "Your little plan won't work. I had an abortion over a month ago. I won't let the baby become another tool for you to make money." Hearing that I had terminated the pregnancy, Leo was stunned. A moment later, he roared, "Daisy, what right did you have to abort my child? Give me back my baby. This isn't over, Daisy. I'm going to sue you. I'll make you pay for this. Like mother, like son." Everything before had been an act. When I got home that evening, I compiled all the things Leo Ainsworth and his mother had done into a short post and shared it on our neighborhood's Facebook group and the community forum. I even posted it on the most popular video platform and paid for it to trend. After posting, I didn't bother checking it again. The next morning when I woke up, I had over 99 plus notifications on my social media. What's more shocking was that the video had been shared over 100,000 times, with likes and comments soaring to 500,000. I couldn't help but admire these keyboard warriors. There's nothing they can't come up with. Some even dug up Leo's workplace and left comments on his company's social media pages. During this time, I received quite a few calls from my old teachers and classmates. Some consoled me and joined me in criticizing Leo, while others, who were doing well, offered to help me find a job or recommended lawyers. It warmed my heart to know that not everyone was just watching for jokes. During lunch, I told my parents about all this. They were worried that Leo might do something rash and harmful to me out of desperation. After all, it's better to be safe than sorry. In the afternoon, I received calls from an unknown number. I hung up 3 times, but they persistently kept calling. When I finally answered, Leo's enraged voice came through. "Daisy Bailey, you've gone too far. I've lost my job now. And I can't even go out without people pointing and whispering. What exactly do you want?" Hearing his furious voice, it was as if he was about to jump through the phone and bite me. I calmly replied, "I told you, I just want a divorce and my things back. After that, your affairs are none of my business. Daisy, do you know how much I've sacrificed for this job? I've worked diligently for years to get to where I am, and now you've ruined it all with one video. Delete the video immediately and come with me to explain things to my boss." I chuckled, "Leo, you seem to have forgotten who got you this job in the first place, whose connections were used." Leo was indeed a top graduate, but his ambitions were sky high. He wasn't content with being a small-time employee in a small company. So he asked if I could use my family connections to find him a better job. At the time, I thought since we were going to get married, if he had a good job, our life would be better too. So I went home and asked my dad to help out. In the end, it was my dad's former student, who's now the general manager at Leo's current company, who arranged for him to get in. Leo seemed to remember this too and quickly said, "Daisy, for the sake of our years together, please help me one more time. Clear things up with my boss, and I promise I'll agree to the divorce." An unexpected windfall. I didn't think he'd agree so quickly. "All right, you said it. See you at 9 a.m. at the registry office tomorrow." The moment I held the divorce papers in my hand, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. Thank goodness it was finally over. The lawyers would take care of reclaiming everything else. I wasn't going to let Leo off easy. "Daisy, now that you've gotten your wish and we're divorced, when are you going to help me appeal to the boss?" Leo asked. I looked at his naive, stupid expression and smiled. "I've already asked for you." Leo's face lit up with excitement. "Really? What did the boss say?" I shrugged. "Your boss was furious. He thinks your actions have damaged the company's reputation and won't change the disciplinary measures against you." "Daisy Bailey, you're playing me." He pointed at me angrily. "Listen here, Daisy. I'm not giving you the house or the car. Consider it compensation for all the years of youth you've cost me. If it weren't for you, I'd have found a rich woman by now." I couldn't help but laugh. "So you're saying I've prevented you from gold digging? Take a good look at yourself, mate. You can't even tell the difference between a dream and a delusion." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving Leo stamping his feet in frustration behind me. I couldn't be bothered arguing with them anymore. I'd already contacted an estate agent and put the house on the market. Within a week, someone came to view the property. Leo's mom was still in detention, so I arranged the viewing for when Leo was out. I was the sole owner on the deed, and I had the property documents in my possession. The family interested in buying was quite decisive. They got back to me within 3 days. When I arrived with the moving company, we coincidentally ran into Leo's mom, who had just been released from detention. As I brought in so many people, Leo Ainsworth and his mother were still a bit dazed. His mom immediately blocked my way, hands on her hips. "What are you doing here, Daisy? You and my son are divorced now. This is my house. You've brought all these people. I'll report you for trespassing if you don't leave right now." "I think you two are the ones who should leave," I retorted. I gestured to the workers, "Take everything you can see in the rooms. The scrap dealers are waiting downstairs, so take it straight down to sell." Leo and his mother were stunned. They tried to stop it but couldn't. Watching the furniture being carried out piece by piece, Leo finally snapped and shouted at me. "What the hell are you trying to do, Daisy? This is illegal." "Oh, so you know about the law now?" I mocked. "Then how come you didn't know that this house is mine, and it's illegal for you to keep it from me? I'm calling the police right now." "Let's see how you'll move things then," Leo's mom said, already dialing on her phone. "All of you stop moving things, or you'll be prosecuted," she yelled at the workers. But the moving company was paid by me, and they wouldn't stop without my say-so. Soon the police arrived, and Leo's mom started wailing to them. Of course, she didn't mention a word about them occupying my house. When the police questioned me, I simply told the truth and showed them the transfer certificate. "The house is mine. I sold it a few days ago, and now I'm clearing it out for the new owner. As for them, they're not related to the property." After understanding the situation, the police turned to Leo and his mother. "The house has indeed been sold. You need to move out as soon as possible." Leo's mom wouldn't accept this. She started shouting, "You must have been bribed by this little tramp to take her side. This is my son's house. Everything became ours when she married my son, even after the divorce. She has no right to sell the house." "Ma'am, please mind your language," the officer warned. Leo's mom stepped forward and shoved the young policeman. "I won't mind anything. What are you going to do about it? I'm warning you, this is assault on a police officer. I don't care what you call it. I just know you're in cahoots with this little tramp. So what if I push you? I'll do it again. With that, she gave the officer another hard shove. That's the second time you've assaulted an officer. We have the right to take you in now. So what if it's the detention center? I've been there before. I'd rather die than let you get away with this today. It was as if Leo had been inspired by his mother's words. He ran out of the kitchen with a knife, waving it at the police. I dare anyone to try and make us leave. I'll fight you all today, I don't care if you're police or whatever. Leo seemed possessed. I quickly retreated outside the door to avoid getting hurt. Sure enough, as the police tried to subdue him, he managed to slash one officer's arm. Leo and his mother were taken away by the police. I also went to the police station with the officers to give a statement. My parents rushed to the station as well, checking to see if I was injured. Leo's mother was crying and making a fuss, demanding to see us. The police asked for our opinion, and I looked at my parents, who nodded in agreement. Leo's mother was quickly brought in by the police. As soon as she saw us, she fell to her knees, sobbing and sniveling. Daisy, please, I beg you to forgive Leo. He didn't mean it. If he goes to prison, his life will be ruined. I was rarely puzzled, begging me won't help. He assaulted a police officer. The person he injured was a cop. Besides, if you hadn't attacked the police first, how would he have dared to pull a knife? When it comes down to it, it's still your fault. Yes, it's my fault. It's all my fault. Your family knows a lot of people. Please, help us out. My mom's face was cold. Where was this attitude when you were bullying our Daisy before? Weren't you quite formidable when you were occupying Daisy's house and car? Leo's mother knelt on the ground, weeping. I'll return the car to you now, and I'll pay back all your money. He's my only son, he can't be ruined like this. I scoffed inwardly. Now she knows to be afraid. But it's too late. Using the address she provided, I found the car that Leo had hidden. It had been parked behind his relative's rental flat in his hometown all this time. I sent the car to the dealership for a thorough cleaning inside and out, and had all the interiors replaced. Leo Ainsworth's mother was released from detention, and having nowhere else to go. She brought her luggage and started living in the hallway of my apartment building. It was March, and the hallway was still quite cold. Leo's mom was living like a homeless person, eating and sleeping on the floor. Whenever she saw someone coming out, she would start wailing. These people are heartless. They sent my son to prison. May they rot in hell. The reason I allowed her to stay so brazenly for a week was that I had installed a small surveillance camera on my door. When the police arrived, she was making a scene right outside my door. After 2 trips to the police station, Leo's mother now became nervous at the sight of officers. Officers, I haven't done anything excessive this time. I was just chatting with the neighbors, she pleaded. I came out of my flat and handed the surveillance footage to the police. She's been living here and disrupting our normal lives. She's also been slandering and defaming us. The neighbors served as witnesses. This time, Leo's mom couldn't utter a word in her defense. As the police took her away, her eyes were filled with hatred towards me. A month later, Leo was sentenced. His future was completely ruined now, and he would carry the stain for the rest of his life. When Leo's mother was released from detention again and learned of this news, she seemed to age a decade in an instant. She had no choice but to slink back to her hometown. However, she had sold their house and land there, and she had offended all her relatives and friends in the village. When she returned, she had nowhere to live. I heard later that she came back to the city and resorted to begging for a living. As for me, while it seems I've won everything, I've also lost many precious things. But at least I saw through the ugly faces of Leo and his family in time, left this pit of fire early, and ensured that my family and I could live safely and happily without being schemed against. Those who hurt me have received their due punishment. That's good enough for me.